Okay, we are going to go ahead and start. We want to welcome you to our 23-24 speaker series. We will be announcing next year's topics soon, so keep an eye out for an email. We're happy to have those of you who are attending in person, and we welcome those of you who are attending online. According to BARC, which is the online monitoring tool that alerts parents on potential online dangers, 1 in 5 children reported that an unknown person has contacted them online. 46% of children have shared personal information online. 72% of tweens and 85% of teens experience bullying online. Exploitation is the second most lucrative crime in the world. 72% of Americans believe their accounts are secure with only a username and password, but every 2 seconds there's another victim of identity fraud. And only 39% of parents use parental controls for blocking, filtering, or monitoring their teens' online activities. Our students have another layer that impacts their ability to be safe online. Whether it's attention deficit, language deficits, or autism, we need to ensure that all of our students know how to keep themselves safe online. This topic was brought up by parents and staff, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to learn from Tim and Tamia Woods. They have created the Do It for James Foundation after losing their son James, and their goal is to help children learn that no problem is too big and that their lives are worth living. So with no avail, we have Tim and Tamia.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining and your willingness to listen to us, taking what we're saying, but most importantly, being here today, because by you being here today, you're able to learn from us and then talk to your children. And each time that talk is being held, James' spirit is being aligned with us. So we appreciate that. We'd like to start off with just asking a little bit of questions, just to get an idea of where you all mindset is, and if you know exactly what sextortion is, and that's what we'll be talking about here today. So by the show of hands, and everyone on Zoom, you can raise your hand as well. How many of you all know what sextortion is? Sort of. And about when did you learn about it? Last couple of years? Are you a teacher? Teacher and parent, but teachers get to cheat mode. You guys get to know what sextortion is. What about you?
I learned about it.
Okay, you're an educator. What about you two? I know brother and sister.
They told me all about it.
Okay, all right. Oh, yeah. We talk to kids about sextortion, how it can happen to a lot of people. It's not exclusive to kids, but the suicide rate amongst them being victims it's growing at a higher rate. I know you all have learned about sextortion, but did you know that there were 2 different types of sextortion? So you have financial sextortion. Have you all heard of that? And then you've heard of just your traditional sextortion. So your traditional sextortion is when you may have heard of revenge porn, or boyfriend and girlfriend, or you might hear about the classmates sharing a picture online, or you may hear about where the actual pedophile addresses our young women, and that is the main target with your traditional sextortion. Typically around the ages of teenage years, 13 to 17. However, we've seen as young as 6 years old. And that is for their own self-gratification or to sell pictures on the dark web. Then you have financial sextortion, which is what James was actually a victim of. And that is money driven. but that's also, your main targets are boys. Okay, so we'll get into a lot of that. We want to make sure that you all are well educated on that, and learning from our story. We don't mind being completely vulnerable about our situation, and, for you all, our main goal is for you to learn through us. Because unfortunately for us, the way that we learned about sextortion was finding our son. So we just don't want you all to join our club. We don't want you to learn the way that we had to learn. And so we're going to continue to tell our story and, speak to whoever is willing to listen. It's totally different. However, it can be in conjunction with the two. So sextortion happens when they typically go online and they will just chat with each other. They will get your kid to expose themselves. It's not always pictures. My son never sent not one picture. And they will either threaten them, and we'll get into what was said to James, or they'll get them to keep sending pictures or keep sending money. Or sometimes when the goal is to sex traffic that victim, then they will lure them into meeting them someplace. So they'll tell them, I'll treat you better than anybody could, or I'll listen to you even though your mom doesn't, or I won't be as mean to you as your father will. And then they'll get them to meet them someplace, and then that's when they will kidnap them and then sex traffic them. So it can be linked together. So Tim, we like to share our memories of James and how we became a family before we get into the dark story of what happened to James. So
First, we would like for you guys to look at the paper with all the apps on it and take a minute to go over them to see how many of them you recognize.
used to being in charge, Caitlin. Okay.
Okay, so out of all these apps, there's tons more. These that are on here are the apps that we found that are used the most from the kids that we speak with. From the top shelf row, whatever you call it, Facebook, WhatsApp, WeChat, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
The second row is Messenger, LinkedIn, Telegram, Snapchat, Reddit, and Cash App.
The next row, Twitter, Roblox, Discord, PlaySea, Twitch, and Wiz.
And the last row is Google Meets, Threads, Tumblr, Apple Pay, Whisper, and Be Real. So who knew all of them?
So we just want to point out three of these in particular, two of them, which is Cash App and Apple Pay. They're not apps, but they are a lot of times what is used to transfer money from the victim to the predator. The other one I want to point out is Wiz.
Have y'all heard of Wiz before?
It is a dating app for teenagers.
They call it a safe space for teens.
Yeah, most people don't know that.
And we've actively helped teens out of sextortion, who were targeted on that. Just be careful when you're talking to your kids. They think it's a safe space. It's like teens, preteens, but I think, the age is like 14 to 24. So like, yeah, for that, like in particular, no one that's 24 should be on an app with a 14-year, and all of those. So we just want to keep certain things in mind, in the back of our head. Oh, and then also Google, how many of your kids have phones? Okay. How many of them are under 13? Okay. So once your kid turns 13, Google messages your kid and they say, congratulations on turning 13. You now can take control over your own phone and you no longer need parental controls. And it says, click here to opt out. So, although we're doing. Yes,
Yes.
because the law is 13 and over, they don't need parental consent right now, so. Once they turn 13, they give them that option. So and we'll get into it, like a lot of like where we're saying we monitor our kids, or we're putting parental controls, we have to talk to our children as well. Because there is a lot of battle that is going on with the parents against these social media apps. And we can say that our Lieutenant Governor John Husted, we back him up 100%, and we actually passed unanimously a social media parental act law back in July of last year, and it was supposed to take effect in on January 15th, and the state of Ohio got sued by NetChoice, which represents these social media apps, until it told us that we're taking away the First Amendment rights of our kids. So, we'll go into a deeper dive on that. But we just want to give you all a perspective of what we're dealing with when we're dealing with our kids, the communication that is needed with our children, and how it can never be enough communication.
So we're gonna talk to you a little about James and who he was and how he got to where he is now. Like most people, you gotta get together to create a child. My wife and I got together in 2004, and we had a kid in 2005. It's the happiest day of my life. I was happy. I was having my first child, and she was happy too, even though she was the one in pain and whatnot. But it was a good time for both of us. We were happy. We had this baby, and we brought him home, and we knew instantly, hey, he's everything to us. We made sure that we gave him a good home. So she went to work and she went to school, day shift. I went to work on night shift and I hated it. She loved it because she got to get the good sleep. But that was our life for a number of years. And we made sure we always had a roof over his head. He always had food. You know, he was clothed. He had people around him that loved him. He had a dog to play with, all the toys he wanted. And as he grew older, he still had those same things. He never really understood what money was or wasn't. We just made sure that he had everything he needed. And the number one thing that we gave him was our love. You know, as a parent, we always tell our kids, hey, you know, stay away from drugs and alcohol. And we made sure we told him those same things. But we also told him why to stay away from those things. And he listened to every single thing we told him. When we told him about certain types of people to stay away from and gangs and, you know, just getting in trouble doing stupid stuff like vandalism or whatever the case may be, he listened to everything we told him. And he was like a sponge. But at the same time, we found out that all the friends he accumulated over the years, his family members that was his age that he hung out with, he told them the same things that we told him. So everything that we made sure he knew, he made sure that the people around him knew too, because he wanted them to be safe. He was always trying to help people to make their lives better and easier, because that's pretty much what we did for him. We wanted his life to be as easy as possible. We wanted him to be a strong-willed person, independent. We wanted him to be responsible, have manners, you know right and wrong, all the things that a person is supposed to be and have. We wanted to make sure that he was that. And talking to his friends, we found out he was all those things. Talking to the parents of his friends, we found out he was all those things. His teachers loved him. His coaches in all the sports he ever participated in, they loved James. Neighbors around the neighborhood, he would always run around just because he wanted some exercise. He put his headphones on, he's running around the block, he's running down the street, he's waving at everyone. Everyone knew him. Everyone always said he was always smiling. He was always laughing. He was always pretty much in a good mood. It was very hard to see him in a down state. Everyone always remembered nothing bad about him because there was nothing bad about him to remember. They would always tell us, your son, he's a very manly person. He's respectful. He's intelligent. He's a good athlete. It was always nothing but praise when James' name was brought up. And us as parents, we felt good about that because parents love to hear good things about their children. It was very rare that we had to hear something bad. You know, when we go to parent-teacher conferences, the only thing really was his grades could have been better. What kid always brings home good grades? You know, I don't know any. Even though kids who get straight A's now, at some point, they done brought home a D. It just happens. But even still, he would work because his mom would get on him about that D. He'll bring it up to a C, a B, and sometimes an A. But all that did was just make her more mad because if he could bring a D up to an A, he just should have did it from the start.
He used to tell me all the time, Mom, C's get degrees. And I'd be like,
But he was our baby, and he was special to us. And it turned out he was special to a lot of people. People saw him, and if they didn't know him at first, it didn't matter. He'd go up to them, he'd stick his hand out, say, hi, my name is James. Look him in the eye, shake their hand. 5 minutes later, he has a new friend. You could be the biggest introvert out there. After you meet James, you're just laughing and joking. You're inviting him over for a dinner. He was just one of those infectious people that you just had to have in your life. He was a good person, and it showed. Nobody could really say anything bad about him. He played a lot of video games. He ran a lot of track. He played a lot of board games, mainly chess and dominoes. You know, he loved watching movies. Every comic book movie that came out, he was there at the movie theater with me watching them. I'm a big comic book fan. I love anime and cartoons. James turned out to like the same things I like. After he got to where he was in life, I realized I had a miniature version of myself, and I loved it. The only differences between him and I was he was a lot taller, but I was fine with that. He was a special person, and he left a hole in our hearts. And that hole got there because I'm gonna say the internet. You know, it's one of the greatest inventions throughout mankind. But at the same time, with all good comes some bad. The paper with all the apps on it that you guys saw, James loved Instagram, he loved TikTok, he loved Discord, YouTube, but his favorite was Instagram. On Instagram, he followed pretty much all the pages I follow. We have similar likes. But like I said, there's some bad when it comes to some good. He was contacted November 18th, shortly after 7 p.m. by a young woman. She was a little older than he was, but he didn't care, and she didn't care. They saw each other. She said, "Hey, you're a handsome guy." He said, "You're a beautiful woman." They were flirting with each other. There's no harm in that. People see each other all the time and tell people what they think. You know, I see my wife, and I just have to hug her a lot of times and give her a kiss. I like her. James, being who he is, he learns from his parents. And he saw what he liked, and he made sure he let her know, "Hey, I like what I see." After they got to know each other for a period of time, you know, what school you go to, how old you are, where do you work, you know, do you have pets? What do you like to do in your spare time? You know, regular questions that people ask when they're dating. After about 8 minutes or so of them getting to know each other, she asked him if he could go to a private location so that they could get on video chat together. He said, "Sure, why not?" After they get to this private location, she then says, "Would you like to see my boobs?" Now, James at this point is a 17-year-old boy. He's full of nothing but hormones. He has a woman in front of him that he finds attractive, who is willing to expose herself to him. We all know he said yes. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It's normal. So she exposed herself, and then after a little bit of talking, she exposed the bottom half of her too. So there she is, fully undressed on this video chat with my son. She then says, "Hey, your turn now." Now he's thinking in his head, there's no harm in this. I'm not sending her a picture of myself. So he exposes himself to her on this video that they're on. Shortly after he does so, he starts receiving messages. The first message he received was a picture of himself. The person that he was on chat with took a still shot from the video that they were on. But he didn't notice. He was like, "Wait a minute, I didn't give you a picture. How did you get this?" He didn't realize what had happened. It was something that was foreign to him. Shortly after they sent him this picture, they started sending him words to go with the picture that they kept repeatedly sending him. These words were, "This is you in all your glory. We're going to share you with the world. We're going to post you on all social media sites. We're going to put you on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, And they listed a whole bunch of others. They made sure to let him know that from this moment on, they owned him. There is nothing he could do. They told him, don't try to run, don't try to hide. You're going to deal with us. For a number of hours, they repeatedly sent him messages telling him what they were going to do. And then they started to tell him how they were going to get him kicked out of school. He was going to be expelled. He wouldn't be able to go to college. He would get kicked off of his sports teams. His friends won't like him anymore. He'll be labeled a pedophile. He'll be in jail. His parents won't love him anymore. They said, we own you. We're going to ruin your life. We're going to make this happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. They beat this into him for a number of hours. He didn't know what to do. My wife and I, we go bowling on Friday nights. It's something we've done for almost 20 years now. James, he's older. He doesn't have to go with us. He can stay home with the dogs. That's when they contacted him. When we got home from bowling that night, Friday evening, he said nothing to us. We didn't know what was going on with him. But when we talked to him, we didn't notice any red flags either. He was the same person. He was happy. He was upbeat. He talked to us for a period of time before we went to sleep. Everything was normal. We saw no red flags whatsoever. Saturday morning comes. I have to be to work at 5 a.m. I wake up, shower, get dressed, come downstairs to go to work. James is already downstairs, fully dressed, wide awake. He's eating cereal with his phone in his hand. I didn't think nothing of it. This is something that's been happening for years. On the weekends, James is always up at night, playing with his friends till wee hours of the morning. Video games. So I said, hey, James, how you doing? Now, in my mind, I'm thinking he's already awake because he and his mother had a college fair to go to that Saturday morning. I talked to him for a period of time. I told him, hey, enjoy the moment. Have fun. Talk to all the schools. You might find one you like better than the one you've already chosen. Enjoy it. Dance. Listen to the music. You know, even think about joining a fraternity. Talk to somebody that's in one of those. You'll have brothers for life. James listened to everything he said. He said, I will, Dad. I was happy for him. He was doing something I never did in my life. I had a sense of pride. I went to work that day with the biggest smile on my face. At the time, I also didn't know that was going to be the last time that I saw my son alive. I went to work. Later on, I got off work about 6 p.m. I made a few phone calls, stopped at the gas station to get some snacks. Then I drove home. I was ready to get online and play video games with my friends. Got to my house and I noticed there was a light. No problem. You know, my wife wasn't there. So I just figured she left a light on because sometimes she does that. Going to the house, the dogs meet me at the door. I go in, play with the dogs a little bit, then I go to where the light is so I can turn it off before I sat down. I open the door and I see my son laying there on the floor asleep. Didn't think anything of it because James, he falls asleep in weird places. I found him sleep on the kitchen floor. I found him sleep in the hallway. I found him sleep stretched between the bathroom and the hallway. I found him sleep on the stairs. It didn't matter where it was. He fell asleep in that place at least once. So when he was in my room sleep, I didn't think anything of it. But after I fully opened the door and stepped into the room, I could see that my son was no longer alive. I didn't know why. There was no answer that I could give myself to why my son was no longer here. I dropped to my knees and I screamed his name and crawled over to him. I laid there on him for about a minute or so. And as I was crying, I realized, my son isn't here, but there's another person who needs to know this. I had to pull out my phone and call his mother to let her know that the only child that she will ever have is no longer here.
James received 200 messages in 19 and a half hours from 4 different people, 3 over in Africa and 1 here in America. Out of the 200 messages, this is an example of one. I am more determined to write your life, make it a waste, a trash can, a shame, dishonor, a hell, a real disaster, a hell on earth. And also I remind you that I am heartless. I have no pity to write a life as well as yours. He received 200 of those messages. And those messages is what really led to my son not being here anymore, because like a lot of times we sit here and we think, you can do whatever you want to do. And we tell James that we love him every day. We did everything that parents should do, but we don't realize sometimes people, not just kids, can be easily manipulated into thinking otherwise just for a short period of time. And these people did that. They made sure that they did it fast, had a number of people, kept them up for over 24 hours. James was actually up for 40 hours because he woke up for school on Friday and never went back to sleep. They instilled suicidal thoughts into his head, a feeling of unemployment. They initially started with $6,000 they demanded from his son. They went down to 300. He could only pay him 100. Tim and I used to tell James all the time, don't ever send anybody your credit card, your debit card number, and don't ever cash app anyone you don't know. I wish that I would have told him differently. If he would have used his debit card, I would have got a fraud alert. I'm not here to nitpick on what we could have done against an invisible evil we knew nothing about. We're here to tell you that these people are evil and their targets are our children. They don't care about adults anymore. They know that they can target teens who are easily manipulated, whose frontal lobe is not fully developed, and they have gift cards. They have money. Who knows how much $100 is if you convert it over into Naira, which is Nigerian money. Do y'all know how much that is? $100 converted over, last time we checked, was $102,000. The average Nigerian citizen lives off of $66 a month. So if they can target our children, which they targeted James, and when we was able to pull a cash app because they tried to extort us next, we were able to connect 50 other kids at that point in time in Ohio alone. 50. This is financial sextortion. And they will do whatever they can to get that money. And whether they sit there and they say, give me my money now. Don't you ever think about blocking us. We will find you. And the last words they said to our son, actually, they're counting down. But they told him to kill himself over and over. You might as well kill yourself. Get rid of yourself now because it's not going away. And the last words James said was, you got me in an unavoidable loop. And I have no way of getting out. This is just, it's so hard. I had one kid. we had one kid. And we did everything for him, and he was such a beautiful soul, such a beautiful soul. And I yearned to touch him again, and I can't. I can't touch my son. I cannot buy him Pop-Tarts. I say that over and over again. I just want to buy him brown sugar Pop-Tarts. And I can't. I refuse to let you all experience what I experienced from this. I refuse. We refuse. So, Tim, did I miss anything? So we want to make sure that you all have all the answers that you need to be able to talk to your children. And we understand that your children are special. And sometimes we have to talk to them and we have to tell them up front. And so we want to make sure that we give you the tools that you need to be able to talk to your children. And so we want to answer any and every question that you have. So are there any questions from you all?
Yes. Well, I will say, it's good that you check through his phone every now and then. How old is your son? 14. Yep, check his phone. He's not old enough to do it himself to where you could trust that he's gonna always make the right decision. Check his phone, try to know who all the people are that he's contacting. He might have a ton of friends, but even better. Yeah, check his phone, know who he's talking to, have conversations with him. And I would say stuff like this particular topic, when you talk about maybe like the birds and the bees, incorporate this part of the conversation into it also so that they can understand the negative side effects to exploration with sex and the opposite sex or the same sex, whatever case may be. So that as he grows up, he already know, hey, I need to watch out for this, instead of it just jumping out and he's in it.
Yeah, sometimes So you just wanna make sure that you're, you watch that, but also still have, a conversation with him. Like if you see something, say something, even if you are embarrassed by it, like we need you here. And the reason why I say that is because, a lot of times you guys, we expect our children to say something to us. But that's in a normal setting, right? That's like, hey, mom, I got a hole in my sock, right? But, we don't take into mind that once this happens to our children, they are now sexually assault victims. And only 30%, actually less than 30% of your victims say something, and that's a female statistic. So think about males. It's an extremely higher number, so, or lower, I should say, lower number. So, we just encourage our kids to say things. One thing I have a question, when you deleted, did you delete the messages first or last? After you talked to the police? Okay. Okay. Okay, so in the future, like what we teach even the kids, we teach block, don't delete. Okay. Yeah, so we want you to block, but don't delete. Even if you take a screenshot of the pictures, they're not able to search and trace. So we want to block it, and then on the tip cards that you guys have, on the back of them, the yellow is for you, the gray are for under 18. So it's for you to give to your child. And it has the exact address that you can make that complaint in. And it goes straight to them and they'll do all the investigation. Please, please, please give the gray card to your kid. I know it has some difficult information. Do you all know what 988 is? That's the suicide hotline. We encourage kids to use that. If they're ever thinking about taking their own lives, or even if they want an unbiased discussion to be had, 988 does that too. Our first priority is to keep your kid alive. James' last Google search was how to get an Instagram page shut down. He was like truly Googling how to take care of the situation he was in without telling a soul. And we just don't want another kid to go through that, especially if they're going through fear, embarrassment, and all these other emotions. You're not going to find the resources you need that way. So we created the TIC card to eliminate that. And we actually just got an award from the FBI a couple of days ago in Washington, DC, for the work that we're doing. And also the kids are starting to self-report using those gray TIC cards. So we're never trying to overstep you ever. But we want to make sure that we keep your kid alive. And then what happens is they will talk to your kid immediately through them once they get the report, and then they'll bring you in. So you're never in the dark about it. They just want to make sure that they handle it appropriately, and we keep your child alive with that. But that is with that. Do we have any questions? Any questions on Zoom, Caleb?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So my.
Mhm.
And with my daughter, it was, we were trying to explain to her that you don't know who is the champion. This person can. They kind of like, but they lost. It was not appropriate, so we had to shut down it. But my question to you is, sometimes it's so difficult children to take advise. Both your child and your student, your. Say thank you so much for sharing.
You're very welcome. We recommend a couple of things. So we do have a documentary on Hulu. It is very age appropriate, so you can sit down and you can talk to or watch it with your child. It's called Sextortion, so if you go on Hulu and just research Sextortion, our documentary comes up. Another thing that you can do that a lot of parents have done is go on our website. The website is on all of the documents you receive. We keep James safe on everything. And the main reason and the thought process behind that is because your kids do not relate to us. They relate to James. So when you watch those documentaries, when you see the interviews, when you go on the website with your child, they actually start to realize why you have certain restraints on them, and they become less combative with that. That's what feedback was given from our kids. The other thing too is, we have to meet them halfway. So we're not parents that are like, no social media, because you're at it's a fine line, right? It's like no social media, but then that's where they socialize now. It's not like how we grew up and we were all playing tetherball and hopscotch. We don't have that anymore. So we recommend for you to continue to put parental guidelines up. So if she's on Roblox, create a parental control. You can do that, right? And so you can do parental controls, and you can only allow certain people into their community, but still check on it. And then tell her, like, if you see somebody that's saying that they're your cousin, but you never met them, make sure that you tell me about it, because it's very important. And thank you for bringing up Roblox. I have one more thing to say about it. Even though Jane's situation was sexualized, exposing body parts and, more mature manner, that is happening with older teens. But with our younger kids, it's not always immediately sexualized, okay? So you may have situations where they're friends or they play on Roblox, but like with the 6-year-old that we are aware of the actual situation that the FBI was investigating. They said they were in the cousin community. One person hacked into that community, and then they said, ha ha ha, pull up your shirt. And they were making jokes, or ha ha ha, moon me. And then now you have pedophilia material. And they don't know any better. Like, they think it's a joke, just like how we thought it was. I mean, we all know somebody who moved somebody growing up, it's not always sexualized, to where your kid can become a victim. And then they in turn say, I have this picture of you, you better say more, or I'm gonna tell your parents. And they want their parents to be, notified, but then they won't be able to play Roblox, or they'll get in trouble, or different things. And so they start sending them more pictures because they don't want to get in trouble. I mean, it's so many different situations that we helped out on, or we were made aware of, where even a cop, her daughter was a sextortion victim, and how they manipulated her was, we're going to tell your mom. And the mom was the cop, and she's like, well, I don't want you to tell my mom because my mom warned me about this. And so then it just became a very bad downfall until they actually was able to find out what happened. We just have different situations. It's scary. It is so scary. But like, our main thing is, and we will say it over and over again, is just talk to your kids. It can always be age appropriate. They understand a lot more than what we give them credit. They really do. A lot of one of the questions, Tim, we ask is, how many of you have been approached in your direct messaging from someone you don't know? And majority of them raised their hands. They know what is going on, but they don't know like how to, compete against it, what to do, how to help their friend, or who to tell about it. And so they just want to educate them. Welcome. You're welcome.
So on the parents, so how,
So, as kids, they're in school, they're doing all these hard math questions that their parents can't do anymore, and they start thinking they know more than they think they know. And we always tell kids all the time, you are smart, and some of you probably are smarter than your parents, but at the same time, your parents still have wisdom on their side, which makes their intelligence higher. And we have to try to get them to understand until you reach a certain age and you've been through certain things, no matter how smart you think you are, you're still not smart enough. And it's hard for people to really believe that they're not as good at something as they think they are. So it's like one of those things you just got to keep hammering into them. Show them some kind of horror stories or something to disprove what they believe, or it depends. Everybody has a different way to learn it. So you have to find one that works for that particular child and stick with it.
Yeah, and what we tell the kids too, when we go out, we speak directly to the kids. We also tell them that everybody has a bad day. So James was incredibly smart. He was incredibly strong. And the only thing, and I beat myself up, and I know I shouldn't, but I go back on like, what could I have done differently? And the answer was nothing, because I truly did not know anything about it. But my son, he fought against bullies. He fought and he made sure he used bigger words. And I said, James, what is this? What does that mean? But we tell kids that every kid has a bad day. And these are master manipulators and professional con artists that are outsmarting even the FBI. So if you're 10 years old, you're not smarter than the FBI, are you? And so we just use like different examples of that. Because we cannot fight against people. Criminals are always 2 steps ahead of us, and we have to catch up. And so we just tell them different things. We tell them we're here to, if you make the mistake, I'm glad you're smart. I'm glad you know not to do this. I didn't do this. I'm glad you think that you may not do this. However, you just never know. And I want you to be prepared just in case.
once you realize what's happening, how did you go? And how you kind of have other things.
So we contacted the police immediately. They came, did their investigation, they took his phone away, and they went through it all night. And that next morning, on Sunday morning, we went to the police station. They sat us down and they told us, hey, this is what you're going to see in here. They prepared us for some things that we probably didn't want to know or whatever. And after we got all that information, we started thinking like, hey, we pretty much know all of James's friends. A lot of them, they go to school with them. So my wife was like, well, we need to go up to the school and talk to them as soon as we can, because we would hate for other people that we've seen grow up end up where James did. So he passed away Saturday. We found out what happened Sunday. Monday, we were in the school talking to his track team and his cross country team, notifying them of what happened and what was going on, and try to just keep people safe with knowledge.
Yeah, we were very fortunate with the police force that we had in Streetsboro. They actually was one of the officers, Officer Stan. He actually was doing a separate project with the Internet Crimes Against Children. And at the time James passed, it was like only 2 known cases, and he just so happened to know about one. And so that's where he knew where to look. We kind of had like an idea, because Tim actually had the idea to pull James' phone records, and like Tim said, we're very close. So we even had a group chat with all of James' friends, as we like to take James out. Like, we didn't want James to feel like an only child all the time. So once a year, we would take him and some of my nephews, his best friends, on a trip every year. And so we had them all on group chat. And so when we were able to pull those records, we found a number that we just didn't know. And so Tim read off the number and I called it, they picked up, hung up. And they said, text me. So I said, may I ask who this is? And they immediately sent me a picture of my son unclothed and then started extorting us, trying to get money.
Trying to extort us.
Yeah, trying. So with what the officers were saying and with what we found, that's literally how we found out. A lot of people aren't aware of what sextortion is. A lot of your officers aren't aware of what sextortion is. But Tim and I, again, we do a lot of educational talks to not only educate you as parents, not only educate kids, but we do nurses, we do law enforcement officers, social workers. We partake in a lot of these things because we understand that it's a community effort. But we have to include our kids in this community this time and making sure that we keep them safe.
Well, we didn't necessarily find the kids. When we gave the phone over to law enforcement, they did their investigation and they took the information we had and linked it to 50 other kids throughout the state of Ohio.
And that was at that time. Some of the things we truly don't remember, just from it being a traumatic experience. We do have memory loss in certain situations. So I cannot explain, like, remember everything, but I do remember like where they were trying to extort us, and I said, fine, I'll send you money. What's your cash app? And that's how I got the cash app. Because James actually sent money, they groomed him, so James didn't want us to find out, so he never used Cash App or his debit card. What they did was they coached him into taking all of his cash, which was a little over $100, told him to go and buy a gift card, and then video chatted to get the number off of the gift card, and then told him to discard it where no one would find it. And so we never found his gift card. We just know from the transcription that he sent that money. But we still are unable to find like where they actually used that gift card.
Yeah, I think you're like super right out about that, the conversations that you're talking, because so many of these like parental controls and so forth, say you did it right, or like robots, right? Every couple weeks, I had it set up right stuff, right? That there's like strange people in it. And then my child, who has a lot of social difficulty, is like, but no, they're my friend, you know, and he really thinks that, but he has a hard time connecting with people in the regular world. So I was like, I'm gonna I mean, they probably are benign people or kids, but you don't, you know, so the talking and the checking, but I wonder, like, actually, that part, yeah, like, are there any, things like, I don't know, like apps for future, or, you know, these things that say like, oh, look at you here, because my understanding is like that is where the roadblocks do their. Any of these. I've heard these type of things advertised. I just wonder, I agree with you, the talking, because it's not always further away.
Right.
The kids with predators. So now we can set up, but I wonder, is there any of those products or?
Well, we,
Is there any,
Mhm,
are there any
yeah.
recommended that you've seen are better than others?
on our website, we do have BART at the time where you can just easily click and download and do everything you need to do. However, we're personally working with a company called Cyber Safely. And they are actually do things from the school's point of view. So like they like to get the contract for the school, from the school. And then every kid that's a part of the school has access to Cyber Safely, and they will track. You still do have to log in, and they have to give you the logins to all the social media apps. But they are tracking, like if there's any cyberbullying, if there's any keywords like I'm going to kill myself, or the acronyms that spell that out, because you know our kids like to use acronyms. So we do recommend something like that, where the money situation, like with Bark is $20 a month. Cyber Safely is a grant that the school and them work on to where it doesn't cost anyone anything. You don't have that burden.
Yes, I can think of a lot of kids that computers that they can come and try to go to school. So. Is it something like that, or like for kids who have phones, is it something you can access?
Both.
Personally?
Well.
Oh.
Mhm.
So you'd ask for students.
Yes, yeah, and we will make sure, like, we're still trying to get all of the finalizations with all of that, and if the schools have any questions in regards to that, we can definitely connect the two of you together, if that's something that you're interested in. We could definitely do that. And they handle everything, like they handle the grant and everything, so that's what we do with that. I do recommend something of that sort, especially your 11-year-olds and your younger kids. We need all the help we can get. And these kids, they're smart. I'm getting dumber by the day. So we just need all the help that we can get. So I would still recommend parental controls. I would still recommend the extra gadgets that can help monitor what our kids are experiencing, but also just the education. And I'll tell you this, and that's why we said we don't mind using James' face on everything, because there has been multiple, and when I say multiples, hundreds of parents. We've been doing this. James passed away November 19th, 2022, and we've helped hundreds of kids out of sextortion. And the main reason, they'll tell you up front, like one kid had told the police and the mom, the only reason why I came to you is because of James' story. I knew James' story. So they remember James' face. They remember who James is, and they relate to James. We just nag. So if we give them a tangible person to see and to share his experience with, they tend to really like understand. And then for people who have older kids, like one of my friends, she sat down and had a conversation about James as well. And what she did is, because she was 16 at the time, and you know, that's that fine line, like they're getting older, they're dating, and you don't want to intrude everything, you want to create that trust factor. What they did was they asked her for her codes to her social media apps, and they sealed it in an envelope and said, we need this just in case it's an emergency or if you break our trust. But until then, we're going to keep this sealed in this envelope. So it's creating a trust factor with them, but you also have instant access if you need it. We cannot monitor everything. I just want to give you another example. We have like forever friends. I call my forever friends, which they are other parents who their children have passed away from being sextorted. And James lasted 19 and a half hours, but James is one of the longest. Your average extortion victim is 6 to 8 hours from the time of contacted to the time they pass away. But we have the South Carolina State Senator, he lost his son to sextortion, and his son, from the time that they contacted him to the time of death was 1 hour and 42 minutes. And another one who's in Olentangy, Ohio, her son passed away only after 23 minutes. So it's only so much monitoring and doing, that's why we just continuously stress conversations. It really does.
Any other questions? None online either?
No.
All of the facts, but not it's a little bit wrong, because what I heard is it should act, but I always feel like she's from her.
So you just reminded me of something. I have a question for all of you by a show of hands. How many of you think that your child would come to you if there was a serious situation that happened? So it seems like you're mostly on the fence. So I'm gonna ask you another question that she usually asks people. When you lost your virginity, did you go to your parents and tell them?
No.
So something like that is really important, right? Because I'm pretty sure if your kid was to tell you, hey, I just lost my virginity today, you wouldn't be happy about it, would you? But at the same time, it's something that is really important and it could lead down a bad path. So you have to give your kids a little more understanding and say, hey, let's sit down and talk. You know, build that relationship to where if there is something going on in your life, that they'll be willing to come and talk to you. Because you don't want them to just go through their life hiding certain steps from you about what they're doing throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
My kids are 21 and 19, but I know our best conversations always happen here in enterprise listening service next or next. So like we can have some of those conversations face to face. And so I would bring I would bring up like those questions and ask them those questions. And they would, you know, most of the time just kind of like roll their eyes, but it's trying to get them to understand that every step, like, so my son, who is 19 right now, like, was like, we're meeting, like, my girlfriends, I'm meeting girlfriends, and you know, it's like, I don't think that's right. But in this day and age, like you said, they're not going to, like, the local park. I mean, baseball. Like, it's people that are just over, that are friends with. So there is a good part of it, but making sure that every step we have in those age appropriate conversations. Because we have kids that have graduated in JV that are in college, but like when we post things on Facebook and now put the message on, like, I would do that comment rather than that post because they don't always think those 2 steps ahead that what we're putting online is not, it should not be out there. So kind of having those conversations every step of the way, that is a program constantly reviewing information so that they kind of know, you know, whether it's exciting or everything. But what would you do if this happened to a friend?
Yes.
And, you know, asking them questions that they can answer. At least.
Yes, and that's a great point. Like, I was trying to think, because Tim and we talked to James about sex and everything. I just don't think that we connected everything. So, we talked to him about extortion and scams, right? We talked to him about sex, but we didn't talk to him about sex extortion, because we didn't know that. And that's what got us. So that's a great point. And the other point is your friend. So like with James, and what these murderers would do is, they, like James got contacted on Instagram. Well, they screenshot their friend. And half of those Instagram friends are current victims. So like with James, they sent some of James' friends, and my nephew, a picture of James and said, if you don't send us money, we will do this to him. So they started extorting them, and then, but it was too late. James was already gone, so they couldn't alert us right away. But then the second half are new victims. So if you are smart and you don't fall for it, your friend may. And so that's another thing that we tell the kids, like, even if you don't, you don't fall for it, still warn your friends, tell somebody about it. Because it's just really, really important for us, and you just never know. So those are great points.
Were they ever able to find? Did this, because I've heard that it's virtually, especially when they're not.
So we don't know if the government, our government knows who did it or not. The people that attacked our son is in the Ivory Coast. And their government told our government that they won't turn over any of their natural born citizens. So it didn't matter what they did or whatever, they're not giving them to us so that they can be prosecuted for what they done. Now, if our government use whatever techniques and knowledge they have to find out who did it or not, they're not going to tell us, of course. But I believe they do know, and they just can't get to the person or people, excuse me.
Yeah, is this recorded, Caitlin? Okay. Stay what I want to say. Yes. It's just one other thing that I want to say, but I just don't want to, mess up our investigation. But it is still an open investigation. But like to, you know, that's why it's so important for us to talk to you guys about it, because, the least amount, like the more we can get to you all, the less money they'll make, and hopefully they'll go and find another crime and get away from our kids. But that's the best that we can do as far as fighting right now. There is a family in Michigan, and two of their murderers were extradited and, found guilty, actually, just like a week or two ago. That is rare. It's more they had connections. And, even with that particular case, it was 6 6 murderers against their child. And they only got 2, even though I know for a fact they knew 3 of the 6, but they only handed over 2. So it's hard because it's the logistics of it. It's like we have to, even here in the United States, we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they did it. So you have to create a case where you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they have did it. Then you have to prove it to another government, and then like they will say, yes, we'll allow it, or no, we won't. And it's at the hands of them. And then they bring it over, and then we have to prove it all over again. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I believe in karma, and I also believe that I don't have to be a witness to your karma.
Any other questions?
Because we can talk all day. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hockey work being done. And I guess when I look at this work, it sounds like there needs to be a lot more power to parents to monitor this. That they're suing the state of Ohio. Is there stuff that we do to like rally parents to fight this, that a 13-year-old should not have that opt out, something that we pay for, that we.
Well, you know what? So I'm one of those people that believe, hey, like Google, they give children the ability to monitor themselves and whatnot. And people believe in all these amendment rights to where children should have the same rights as adults. But my thinking is, if my child goes out and does something wrong, are you going to hold me accountable too? The answer is yes. So why shouldn't I be able to monitor my child the way that I see fit if I'm going to be the one that has to suffer for what is done? And I believe that every parent should have the ability to say or do or, monitor, discipline, raise their child however they see fit without an outside person saying, you have to do it this way only. I don't think that's fair for any parent to be restricted on what they can give their child. No child needs complete 100% access to everything out in the world. And that's what the internet does.
And we haven't we lost the battle, but we haven't lost the war with that. So it may sound like it's 100% a bad thing that we're like the state of Ohio is being sued by NetChoice. But what we're wanting is for all states to be sued and it becomes a federal offense. So, or a federal case. So I think right now we're at 13 states being sued. So we're trying to get to half of that. And then we can fight a federal issue. It can be a federal issue. But, of course, it's gonna take time, hopefully not a lot more kids being victims, but. Yeah. Yeah, we weren't able to be there physically, but James' picture was being held during that thing. I know it's going to be, that's an ongoing battle. But it's your top 5. So your Google, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, and Metaverse. So like Instagram, Facebook. I think that they're gonna have to do something or else. But the other thing too is what's interesting to me is the TikTok, the CEO of TikTok, he does not allow his kids on TikTok. He does not allow his kids are, I think 5 and 8 or 8 and 10. I cannot remember, but I know one is 8. And he does not allow his kids on TikTok. It made me understand, I do like in one of, they were asking him like, they did their own private, like Facebook did their own private investigation and found that it was very detrimental to our kids and they did nothing about it. During that case that you were talking about, yes. Or cyberbullying or all of those different things. We just don't realize like how detrimental it can be as far as our mental health and the access that they can have to our children. If we were getting bullied in school, we would be bullied during school and then we go home and we would have a break. But like when James made a mistake, and when we make a mistake, we have time to figure out like, oh shoot, do I tell mom? Do I not? Do I do this? Do I do that? But following James' mistake was 200 messages. So he never got a chance to think clearly. I think that we don't, we tend to not connect it until we hear a story and like, but it's so many different things that I think that they need to be held responsible for. And it will go on board, like we're suing. Because 19 and a half hours, although it's fast for us, in internet time is extremely long time, and they should have alerted somebody, and they never reported it to anybody. He had all kind of warning and red flags in those messages. And although we don't think that Instagram is 100% responsible for Jen's death, they should be other things that they put in place to where it could have saved my son's life. And if you're putting me in jail for calling somebody stupid, then why aren't you, blocking and the access to them having a son? I keep saying my son's, our son, but oh, I was gonna say one other thing. Oh, oh, yes. One other thing, so you all know that social media has a responsibility to report child pornography and other things to the Internet Crimes Against Children, right? Do y'all know who has not ever reported one thing? No, say bigger than a social media
It's the
app,
#1 company in America by rents.
Apple. Apple has not reported not one crime against children, not no child pornography, no, any kind of cyber crime. They do not report it and they refuse to. Yeah, you can get them I hate saying this because I have an Apple, but you can give them an Android in this case.
But you know what? Another thing about Apple. They refuse, if your son, your child, whoever, if they get locked out of their phone, Apple will not break into it for you. They're gonna tell you that your kid has rights and they don't want to step on those rights. They will not open that phone for you.
Yeah, so it's a privacy, they say it's privacy, so like with my forever friend in Olentangy, Ohio, she has a law it's supposed to be coming out, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this about, but it's called Brady's Law. But she's lit a fire under Apple, when he passed away, he's actually one of the first victims, but they did not know it. Because when he passed away, he had just changed the password to his phone. And so it took them 10 months to get into his phone because Apple refused. Apple said, take us to court, give us a subpoena, and they ended up finding a military person who could hack into their phone. And that's how they found out he was a victim of sex extortion. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known it. They only had 3 more chances before it reverted back to factory setting. So she has a big ordeal. And the thing with that is, with her being in Olentangy, but it's Columbus. I'm born and raised in Columbus. So if that would have happened to Jane or to her son, if she was able to say something, because she did do a report when she found out and they did do an article on it, I would have heard about it and possibly would have saved James. But by the time she found out, she did her first interview within the same week of James' death. So I back her up 100%. There could have been ways around it. That's why we're here. We're just here to like make sure that you guys are aware. Say, well, we did our part. We made sure, and we'll continue to. We're not going to wear, but like. And the other ones, I know this is a lot. I mean, this is a lot. But we just want to continuously like make sure that you keep updated. We'll keep our things updated as far as like educational pieces. We did want to let you all know that we have a walk-around day of fun on July 20th. It is in Streetsboro, but we give out scholarships during that time. Last year we gave out $12,750 in scholarships. But our main goal is to encourage communication between family and kids, but also for kids to get firsthand knowledge. So our vendors are some of your typical vendors, but then other vendors that we bring out. The Internet Crimes Against Children will bring out their truck. The FBI will be there. The Crisis Center will be there, Coleman. Digital Forensics will be there. and a couple of other vendors that are very important, that we encourage our kids to actually talk and have a full conversation with, so that they know the full truth of what's being told. Because these murderers, with names, they told half truths to make him believe, and so we just need the kids to understand. And in turn of them going to visit each vendor, they get put into a box and we randomly give out scholarships from that box. So we just want to encourage that they get that information. It's called the Do It for James Foundation. So it's our second annual walk, run, day of fun. I know it's a long title. But to do it in registration, the more registrations we get, the more the scholarships we can give out. But it's Do It for James Foundation Walk, Run, Day of Fun. And we have food trucks, we have stilt walkers coming, and we have jugglers, like all kinds of fun stuff. So I want you to come and partake in this. You're very welcome. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.